Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everybody. It's Shep Hyken here. We're back with another episode of Amazing Business Radio. We have a great guest today. It is Heather Younger, the founder and CEO of Employee Fanatix. And she is going to be talking about her latest book, The Art of Active Listening, and how listening plays such an important role in the customer experience. Before we go any further with the interview, a couple of quick announcements. Number one, I want to thank our sponsor, Text Expander. Text Expander, we're going to hear more about them in just a little while, but I'd also like to remind you that if you've got an amazing story or a question, please reach out to me on any of the social media channels. If it is a question, use the hashtag #AskShep, and I'll be sure to answer the question either at that social media channel, in the articles that I write with my Shepherd letter, which is my weekly newsletter, perhaps on this show, or maybe my TV show, which is Be Amazing or Go Home. And you can find episodes on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Roku, and you can go to beamazing.tv. That's beamazing.tv, and you can find all the episodes there. All right, it's time to jump into our interview. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited because you are a repeat offender. You have been on the show. The last time we talked about your book, The Art of Caring Leadership. Is that right?
Yes.
And this time you have a new book, which is all about listening, titled The Art of Active Listening. And if you're listening to this episode before April 25th, 2023, that means that you have the chance to pre-purchase the book on Amazon. I urge you to go there, because if there's one area that is probably so important to customer service, it is listening. As a matter of fact, before I start letting you talk, our new research just came back. And you know what? The number one reason customers don't do business with the company, when they're trying to get support and they choose not to do business anymore, Heather, take a guess.
Listening.
Well, and I'm going to tell you what ties into listening. It's actually not listening. It's not listening.
Oh, yes. It's not listening.
It's not listening. And it's rudeness. It's basic rudeness. Now, what's interesting is that 40 years ago, there was a study, or close to 40 years ago, by the Technical Assistant Research Program commissioned by the White House Consumer Affairs. And you know what? The number one reason people stopped doing business was, apathy and rudeness. People just don't seem to care. They don't seem to get engaged. They don't seem to connect. And listening can solve all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go there. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Man, I've been doing this listening work, but first on the customer experience side and then on employee experience and leadership side. And I realized after diving into like over 30,000 survey comments myself and doing tons of employee focus groups, I just realized that listening is like an epidemic in itself, a lack thereof, like not actually being present for people. So this book on the art of active listening, yes, it's kind of a spin-off from the previous book on the art of caring leadership. One of the chapters in that book was on creating a culture of listening. I wanted to dive deeper because I just felt like it's just a huge problem. If we are failing to listen, we can never get to the truth of anybody who's in front of us. We can never we make lots of assumptions. That's all we're doing all day, because we aren't listening.
Well, I think listening, feeding back with maybe a question or two for clarification, listening some more. Okay, because it's not just listening sometimes once. We've got to drill down and make sure we understand. I used to use the example of the stock market. When my financial advisor came in to talk with our employees and our team about our retirement plan, 401k, he asked, what is your risk tolerance on a scale of 1 to 10? And people would share the number, and I remember, and there's somebody who she is, because she's our good friend, Lois Kramer. Okay. I remember Lois saying, I have a pretty high risk tolerance. He goes, oh, really? Give me a number. 8, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10. Great. So what would you consider risky? Well, I invest a lot in fixed income, and that's it. So her actual risk tolerance wasn't an 8. It was much lower. But had he not asked that extra question, she would have not given him the answer, or he would have not understood the true answer. So It's just sometimes you ask the extra question.
This is what happens when you are living life, isn't it?
So,
I do agree, though. I think asking and when you're talking about active listening, it is about asking the right questions. And in my book, I actually outlined a 5-part framework for kind of the new way, the better way to listen. So
I want to hear it. The
yeah, so
5-part framework.
Yes, absolutely. So the first part is recognizing the unsaid. And that is like, looking at the nonverbal cues, sensing what's happening inside the culture, what's happening in your workplace, what's happening with your customer when you're either watching them on Zoom, when you have them in front of you, what's happening with them. And so if you don't recognize that, you leave blind spots. And you can't even really do fruitful listening if you can't recognize what people aren't saying. And that happens so much if you think about it in the customer experience realm, because there's so much body language happening, or they're non-responsive on their side, or they're calling us, and what are they trying to tell us? And are we recognizing it, even again, just without us having a conversation with them? That next step is
hold on. You mentioned the unsaid, which in my world, NSAID. What's an NSAID?
Unsaid.
Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. NSAID.
No, unsaid.
Unsaid. The unsaid.
Unsaid.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I understood.
Unsaid. It's the unsaid. So, again, what is happening in the environment, like, where people aren't saying a thing. They aren't saying a thing, but they're saying a whole bunch.
But in listening, that unsaid, if you're on the phone and you're in a call center, call center is so 80s. It's contact center now with all the different ways we communicate. And I know it's hard to catch on a chat, as we're doing texting back and forth with the customer. So we may have to ask extra questions. And that's not about listening as much as clarification, because we can read what they're saying, but we need to understand what they're saying. Same thing when we're verbal, you can hear the voice inflections. So you really need to listen to hear what's going on. And then, all right. So number 2.
The second one is what most people think of it. It's seeking to understand. And it's, I always tell people this test for real good seeking this is where you're leaning in. This is where you're actually trying to understand what's going on with someone. And leaning in on the phone, leaning in person. Again, it depends on who it is that you're serving. Because I feel like in my life, I'm serving many people in different types of stakeholders and different types of environments, right? So, but the seeking, in order for it to be fertile, we need to be asking ourselves whether we are there to serve them, whether to give them something or to get something. And what I mean by that is, like, we're in the business world, so we have to get something. Like, we have to get more information to help them solve a problem. We have to make them so they're, find out what's bothering them so we can keep them as a customer, like all of those things. But that the main focus is in service. Is it going to give them our undivided attention, going to give them the presence of the gift of our presence? Or is it the main reason to serve us? And so the seeking part, in order to be fertile, that has to be kind of that first listening mindset. The foundation of listening is that. And then it's, the idea of being reflective in your listening. And of course, paraphrasing things. But I always tell people that when you paraphrasing is not parroting. We've gone down a really bad road with parroting what people say. And so paraphrasing really ends up being what people say and what you see their response to what they're saying. So if someone says something to me, if someone says something to me and I see that they're frustrated, or I see that they're anxious about the thing that they're talking about, then I might say, oh my gosh, Shelley, I totally am seeing what's happening here. So here's what you said to me, and I can see your frustration, and I can see your anxiety, and so I'm summarizing what I see and their emotional state, also what they say, but not in a parrot way where it's like word for word. So right. The seeking to understand is that phase. And then, did you want to say anything about that?
Shep? I think that's an important thing. And you mentioned, you can see the frustration. Well, you can also hear the frustration. And sometimes, depending on how people use exclamation points and all capital letters in a text, you can then notice the frustration.
Totally.
Right. So I think it's important, you're seeking to understand. And the whole idea of paraphrasing, to your point, I think that's a form of acknowledgement. And in a customer service situation where a customer's calling with a complaint, we talk about the first 2 steps are apologize and acknowledge. And the acknowledgement could be something, to your point, I can see your frustration, or I can hear the frustration in your voice. I would feel that way if I were you,
Yep.
If I was you. So
Yep.
and then we move on to the next step, which is let's discuss what the resolution is going to be. And
Yep.
anyway, so great. Number 3,
Decoding.
decoding.
And decoding, which is kind of another way to say pause and reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's breaking down what it is we gathered in the first 2 steps and taking time instead of going to jump to action, which is most of our inclinations. Unless it's an urgent situation, you pause and you reflect either by yourself in a group with your manager, with your team before you take action. Because what happens often is we listen, we hear this thing, and boom, we go solve it. Boom, boom. And what I've found being in customer experience roles, leading customer experience, what I have found is if we respond too quickly, we often don't solve the problem that actually needs to get solved, or we respond too quickly and we create a bigger issue than we did before because we didn't take time to investigate, to research, to involve a bigger team. So we go to a customer's not happy. We go to them, we're thinking like we're listening to them. We think we resolve it. We give them an answer they want. Then we go tell our manager or somebody afterward. And then we realize that the thing that they were complaining about, like 20 other customers were complaining about. And so now like IT did this thing and they're working on this big project, but now you have to go back to the customer and go, oops, the solution I thought I was giving you, and I thought I was kind of being the hero, is not it wasn't the solution. In fact, they're working on a much bigger solution that will solve your problem long-term. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't pause to reflect, to decode, to investigate, to process what it is that's being said to us. And so, by the way, this happens like one-on-one, it happens in organizations, it happens on teams, it happens at home, like it happens everywhere, where we just want to go boom, 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 solve.
It's easy to jump to conclusions. And it's also part of our
jump to action.
Some of us have a makeup where we're not patient enough to listen properly.
Yep. And so decoding is that step where most of us fall down. Most of us don't do that step in particular. And then it can get us into a crazy place. For example, somebody might want us not to do a thing. Sometimes people just want you to listen to them, like just lean in, be there for them, be present. And that is the action. But if we don't pay attention, if we don't ask them for permission to act and we just go act, and we are going to mess up the relationship anyway. So you want to make sure that you're kind of pausing, you're making this kind of a conversational, relational interaction versus kind of, interactional, like, something that's just transactional.
Right.
And when you do that, they know then that they, that you've been hearing them.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. All right. So we've got 3. We're going to go to 4. But before we do that, we are going to take a short break. It's like a cliffhanger. And when we come back, we're going to get number 4, number 5, and learn more about how listening can impact the customer experience positively. We are talking with Heather Younger, the author of The Art of Active Listening, not quite yet available if you're listening to this early once the episode comes out, but you can pre-order it on Amazon. And also, Heather is the founder and CEO of Employee Fanatix. I love the idea that people focus on employees because what's happening on the inside of an organization is felt on the outside. So Heather knows her stuff. So get the book, important to do. Right now, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Let's talk about Text Expander, a tool that allows your team to eliminate repetitive typing with just a few keystrokes. Anything you type over and over, such as customer responses, will be at your team's fingertips so they have the power to do what they do best, just faster. Quickly reply to emails and chats from a library of responses that you create, completing answers to common questions and issues. Your entire team stays on the same page with the same common responses that can be personalized on the fly. And it's simple to use. Type commonly used content into a text expander snippet and give it an abbreviation of just a few letters and symbols. Share the snippet with the team. When you type the abbreviation, it triggers the snippet and the content expands anywhere you type, including email, chat, or social media. It's that easy. Just go to www.textexpander.com to learn more about this amazing and productive tool. Sign up for a year and get 20% off.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We are back on Amazing Business Radio talking with Heather Younger about her latest book, The Art of Active Listening. And we've gone through 3 which was listening for the unsaid. I said, not the unsaid. And the only reason I know this, I work with some pharmaceutical companies, and NSAIDs are like Advil, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I thought, what does an NSAID have to do with listening? Number 2, seeking to understand. Number 3, decoding. What is number 4?
Act.
Action.
So
take action.
Yes. So often what happens when we're thinking about that customer who's on the phone, who's in front of us, we're leaning in, we're doing such good, reflective listening. We're repeating back, but we're maybe even picking up on some things. We may even say, can you hold for a minute? I need to go talk to my manager and do some of that like on the fly decoding with different people that are there. Right. But then sometimes we fail to act in the way the customer wants us to act. And so first we have to figure out if they want us to act in any other way besides just listening to them. We need to find out what are the solutions they're looking for so we can try to solve for the thing they want or need. And then again, we need to act in a timely manner and hold to our promises. So if I say to you, I'm going to get back to you in a few days, I'm going to get back to you in a few hours to see if we have a solution, I hold to the promise of getting back to you in that 3 hours, get back to you in that 3 days. So that person on the other end knows and feels valued, heard, and understood through the process. So the action is where kind of the I is dotted, the T is crossed in the listening phase, because they start to see now evidence that the listening took place. There's like evidence there. So action is super important.
Let me tell you a great story. I won't tell you the name of the company, but their initials are FedEx. Oh, there you go. So we use FedEx to ship a lot. We actually, we split it up a little bit, but FedEx is one of our main companies we use to ship our books and products. So we had 60 cartons of books. We had a huge sale for a client going out, and we always do it the same way. It costs approximately $18 per box to ship because they're pretty heavy. You got heavy books in there, right? That's what it costs. So if you multiply, let's round it up to 20, 60, that should be about $1,200, actually a little less, right? About $1,100 some odd. We get a bill for like $6,000, and we don't know why. So we call, and it turns out that it doesn't matter what happened, but the FedEx rep that we were talking to, she listened, she did every single thing you're talking about perfectly. And it's still not resolved, but let me tell you what she did. She goes, this is going to take some time because this is crazy. They were charging per box, obviously, like 3 times more than it should be. And so she says, we're figuring out, I'm going to call you every 3 business days until this is resolved. And I hear the phone ring. I go, what day is it? I bet you that's FedEx calling. And then Cindy in the other office answers the phone, and sure enough, it is. Every 3 days, almost like clockwork, we're getting progress reports. I think that's taking action.
It is taking action. Oh man. And the other thing that is doing is this next step, which is closing the loop.
And
so,
by the way, I will say that that's a compliment to FedEx. I'm not knocking them for the problem, because complaints resolved properly restore confidence to a higher level than if the problem had never happened before.
Absolutely.
That's what's happening right now. We have faith in our rep at FedEx taking care of us.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point you make, Shep, that with all of these things I'm talking about, it's not a time to go back and be like, oh, I really suck at that. Boy, that thing that Heather talked about, I'm bad. I don't want you to go smack yourself for yesterday. It's figuring out now that you know more, what are you going to do with it? Right. And can you be better, but not perfect? Because none of us are. So I would say that's a really good point that you make. And I love this idea of like, if you do fall down, it just gives you an opportunity to demonstrate really good listening by your next action.
Yep.
Right. So that next step, the final step in that cycle of active listening, is closing the loop. And when she was coming back to you with the action that was happening, and she was doing it often, and at the end, she probably came back to you and said, is everything good? Like, are we all set? Did you see your final bill? So the closing the loop part is really where X marks the spot. It's where listening is complete and the cycle kind of starts over and over because it never stops. You're always listening to different people. But it's saying to the person, thank you for your feedback. Here is the action we took. Here is the action we're going to take. We can't do the action you want, but here is a compromise. And then as we continue to take action on your behalf, let's say this is a multi-pronged change process, but something we have to do for you that's multiple steps. Every step along the way, as this woman did, she's going to come back to you and say, by the way, here's what happened. And we're doing this tweak for you. Okay. Oh, we'll be back. And we come back again. Oh, here's what happened to you. Boy, I mean, think about even just to those who are listening, the last time somebody did that for you, like it imparts a sense of importance on the person on the other end. It
Sure
says,
does.
I'm not
Yeah.
just a number, right? And so that's the importance of using and walking through the cycle, not forgetting that decoding and not forgetting to close the loop. What often happens is people do act, and we act quickly, and it comes from our heart, and it's like we're good people. But we did too quickly, and we never told the person on the other end that we acted. Like they kind of are looking around going, I think that process changed. I think the process changed because of the feedback I gave, but they're not 100% right. They're not sure.
And even when they are right, and they know it happened, and they know, let's say, Heather, I called you, I have an issue. It's taken a little while to resolve. You did everything. You told me what we were going to do to get it fixed. You followed up with me. If you don't close the loop to just do a final acknowledgement, you're missing a really great opportunity, a touch point that will take your relationship just a little bit deeper with that customer, because they in turn will trust you more. The better you do on customer service, the more likely you are to build that trust. Trust creates confidence, and without confidence, you can't have loyalty.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that trust does is trust creates safety. And safety allows the customer to tell you the real truth. So you're not guessing, so you're not solving for the wrong thing. So trust does a lot of things. The listening, being a really good listener, helps you develop more of that trust and safety.
So we've got the the cycle, as you call it, the 5 steps or the process. What do you see as the biggest barrier to someone in the customer service world learning and how to do this and consistently listening in the way that you described?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that most of us have so much, and probably too much on our plates, right? And so there's just day to day, or we just become transactional in our jobs. And so I think that's the biggest barrier, is saying in our minds, we're transactional. We're trying to get it done. We're here from 8 to 5, or we got 25, whatever, 35, 150 customers we're talking to in a day. And it just becomes very transactional. And so it's up to us to say, what is the one thing I can do better to insert more of a relationship in this conversation? This is relational, not transactional, to be really intentional.
When I was younger, I played racquetball very competitively, very serious. I actually wanted to go on the pro tour at one point. And my coach used to say, the game goes to 21. Don't look at the game as 21. When we get to work in the customer service world, oftentimes, to your point, we have X number of calls that we're going to accept and receive today, okay? You need to look at each one of these points, my coach told me, as an individual game, 1 point at a time. If you lose this point, get it out of your mind and move on to the next point, okay? We're going to try to make every customer happy. That's our goal. Many of us in the customer service world, that's part of what we do, and why we love it is because we get a chance to turn people around, solve people's problems, make new friends, get rid of enemies, right? And convert them. And so this is what we need to look at, is one interaction at a time. And by the way, very important, you used that word interaction earlier today. I thrive on the word interaction, because if you use the word transaction, it's a one-time thing. But an interaction means this is one of many interactions this customer is going to have with me, my colleagues, and my company for many years to come. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing final about it. It's just part of the process.
Yeah, when you look at the journey, that the whole customer experience. And I think about, as you say that too, I think a point to be made here is the opportunity that we have with every interaction when we're looking at it relationally, no matter if it's 150 people I'm talking to every day, to make the person on the other end feel heard, valued, and understood. And how often are they feeling unseen and unheard and ignored and like a number on the regular day? And what can you do just to do the one thing that just makes the one difference that makes people feel more seen and heard? And I think that's the key.
You know what? And I'm just thinking of something, and you're going to laugh at this, and I hope the people listening will laugh. When you call customer support and they don't the greeting is, callous at best. It's not friendly. And then they say, do you have an account number? And sure. And I give them the account number, and they go, okay, what's your name? Well, didn't I just give you my account number? It's like, why don't you ask my name first?
Yes.
And then start using it. Can I call you Shep? Okay, great. Shep, first thing is I want to open your account. Do you have an account number? Okay.
Exactly.
If all you did was flip the two questions, it has a completely different experience.
My gosh, I had a lady the other day that was so rude. And I I just said to her, I can't remember what it was now but I the exact like service I was trying to do, but I was trying to schedule an appointment for my son. And she said, did you fill out the portal? I said, no. Okay, well, let's get you an appointment. It's okay. And then I said, can we do it before school? Well, I'm sorry, I don't know what before school is. Can we do it after school? I'm sorry, I don't know what after school is, just in that exact tone. And I'm like, okay, well, before 7:30 and like after 3-ish. And she said, we don't have times like that. I said, you don't have any times like that ever? Like she just was like, there was just no compromise. It was like,
I would love for the doctor to call their own office and use those same words and experience what you're experiencing.
It was pretty ugly. I was like, and I have plenty of those experiences. I think we all do. We got the experience that we never forget.
Yep. All right, let's wrap it all up. We are running out of time, and you've done this before. We have the one last question. What is that one thing, that one morsel of information? Let's pull it from your book. Like, give us something, that last nugget of wisdom that will make us say, oh my gosh, I've got to read the entire book. What would that morsel and piece of information be?
I say there's two, but I'll do it real fast. The one is that the biggest present you can give someone is your presence, and understanding that the undivided attention you provide the other person gives them the biggest gift. There could personally on the other end could be hurting in a big way. You have no clue what's going on in their lives, and you giving your undivided attention, your presence to them in the moment could be the game changer for them in their day and in their life. Wow. I think that alone is impactful.
Love it. Boom. Tweet that out. Post that on LinkedIn. Let's make a TikTok that just says, my present to you is my presence. Wow. I love that. Hey, this is Heather Younger. She is the author of The Art of Active Listening. It is available soon on Amazon. Pre-order it now, or if it's later when you're listening to this, just go there. It's available. It's great. Heather's great. Thanks for being on the show again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a delight, Shep.
It's fun. It really is. All right, everybody, that wraps it up. Another episode of Amazing Business Radio. I want to once again thank our sponsor, Text Expander, and we will be back next week with another amazing interview. So until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.